to Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Okay, so it was about, I'm going to say, 5 years ago-ish that I got word of a gentleman named Andy Johnson way out in the western side of Wyoming. He had, according to all Wyoming rules and regulations, built a stock pond. So he's a welder with some animals on the side, like a lot of people in Wyoming have, and he built this stock pond and take care of them. And in typical Andy Johnson style, that means there's a nice dam to drive over with a road, and there's some iron work because he's a welder. Look great. The water coming out of the pond, because it continued downriver, it did not interrupt the flow of the little stream. And it's just a little stream. That water was actually cleaner coming out of his stock pond because of the way he built it, and it attracted wildlife. And so this was all according to all Wyoming standards, rules, and regulations, and beyond. Then the EPA shows up. So, Andy, how much did they fine you per day?
It was $37,500 per day, and over the course of our case, it added up to over $16 million.
Wow. Okay, so that fight lasted for several years, didn't it?
Yeah, it did,
Yeah.
and we're pretty thankful that it's all over and done with now.
Okay. Pacific Legal Foundation helped you out. I know Governor Meade called you and said that he had your back on that thing. So what I thought was the interview that you and I had after you had finally beaten the tar out of the EPA with the help of the Pacific Legal Foundation, but it was just humiliating, and I thought funny, the deal that the EPA struck with you. I mean, they're trying to save face, but it was just ridiculous. Yeah. What did you have to do in order to get out of that with them? Because they negotiated, didn't they?
Yeah, it was almost laughable. They wanted me to plant willows along the edge of the pond and put up a livestock fence so that the animals couldn't access the waterway. They even wanted to plant some cottonwood trees, which we explained to them that there wasn't any cottonwood trees within about a mile either way. So then they just threw that off the table. and then they did put in writing that they would never sue me over this pond. They could never come back. It was actually a really solid settlement.
Okay.
So it was good.
Yeah, okay. And to this day, the pond is still there. That's good. And it's all actually doing good because I remember one of the conversations you and I had. You were saying that you watched wildlife approach the pond where it used to be just a little trickling creek. But what kind of animals did you see out there?
Oh, there's all kinds. There's we have a lot of waterfowl that use it. There was moose that would go up and down, eat on the willows. We had deer. I have seen mink, muskrat, beavers. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
It was in addition to, It was a good thing for the wildlife, for sure.
Oh, sure. Okay, so I have been complaining for years on this program that I hate government bureaucrats that just show up, not just the EPA, just show up out of the blue, whip out a pad and pen and just start inventing violations that don't exist and inventing fines because the amount that they were fining you per day was just made out of thin air. The guy just grabbed that number and handed it to you. So this needs to be stopped. Somebody has to put a stop to this. So it's good that you won the case, but we're not done yet. So you're in Washington, D.C. I got that video that you sent me last night. You got a chance to speak with the president. And, in fact, my favorite part of the video really is where the president is distracted by your son.
Yeah. He thought he was pretty cute.
Yeah, just making some
reference to him.
some noises.
And actually, after the whole event, when he went to leave, he shook my hand and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Nice baby."
Oh, yeah. So, in Washington, D.C., and I'm sorry to have seen this. I'm glad you gave a nice little talk there standing next to President Trump about what had happened to you, but so did several other people because your situation has happened all over the country. So this led to an executive order. What is the executive order that the president signed? What is it attempting to do?
Okay, so what the executive order does is it holds all government agencies more accountable when they go through the enforcement process. It basically gives the common everyday person like myself due process by being able to challenge it versus just having a big fine dropped on you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would have a chance to plead my case, and then another part of it is they have to post all of their rules and regulations on the national website. So in my case, the state of Wyoming did not know that I needed a 404 stream altercation permit, nor did my county or anybody that I went through the state engineer's office. So this is pretty much putting the responsibility back on the government and saying, wait a minute, you guys get your ducks in a row before you do any type of enforcement. And I really think this is a good thing for Wyoming. This is a good thing for everybody. And if nothing else, it just puts the EPA under a microscope.
Sure.
Well, our president is not a big fan. He's about the economy. He's about moving forward. He's about getting things done. And this whole bureaucracy of hide in the shadows in the closets and come out and just drop the hammer on people that aren't expecting it. People are losing their businesses. They're shutting, their family-owned businesses down, going bankrupt because of all these rules and regulations. I talked to one guy that had a oyster farm in California, and he said they had to close the doors because of the regulation. And the other guy that stood and spoke at the event yesterday, he's from Alaska, and his business is under fire because the EPA is claiming that they're subject to the Clean Water Act, even though it's frozen tundra where they're at. It's frozen ground. It has never thawed out. It's been frozen for thousands and thousands of years, and yet the EPA is claiming that as a jurisdictional Clean Water Act. It's just unheard of. So I really am thankful that we have the president that we have in there. I think he's doing a great job, and this is going to be good for Wyoming.
So this, in part of, is what President Trump was talking about. And for those who want to watch this, you can go to the Wake Up Wyoming website because I put the story with the video there. Now, I queued it up to where Andy talks, but you can back up the video and watch what the president has to say. And part of what he talked about is how these regulators, and again, not just the EPA, but how regulators will interpret something. So when you're talking Clean Water Act, it was never meant for frozen tundra, but they're going to stretch its meaning so they can go ahead and create a regulation that doesn't exist. So this is the attempt. Now, another thing, I've had this discussion with people over the past few years. Remember, Andy, you used to hear, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Absolutely. That's what they told me, Glenn.
Yeah, well, it has been found now, not just with your case, Andy, but with many other cases as well. It has been found time and time again in the court of law. We have not just so many laws, but regulations and interpretations of those regulations by bureaucrats that ignorance of the law is actually a defense now. It's gotten that bad. So hopefully what the president has signed, I want to see how this goes into effect, what kind of, hopefully a good effect that it has. Real quick, there's some people that were with you. You mentioned the gentleman from Alaska, the gentleman from California, and you and I can go through case after case of where agencies have shown up and just shut somebody down based on their broad interpretation of the law. How many people are there with you in D.C. going through this?
There was at least two other people that had similar
stories. Okay,
that was tied in with Pacific Legal. But if you research, there's people across the country in every state, in most counties, that are going through something like this. And if nothing else, I think that the president just brought to attention that this is wrong, this is unconstitutional, and that this. And I really like how he worded when he was speaking about the bureaucracy that is not accountable. And we need to have the people, the voters, should be in charge, basically. I really liked how he said that because the EPA, there's nobody holds them accountable. They do what they want, they fine as they want, they carry on as they want. So I think this is a great thing.
There's a case a few years ago. I'm trying to remember the name of the family and where they were from, but you might be aware of this. There was a case where husband and wife wanted to build a house by a lake, and they actually picked an empty lot in a small neighborhood by this lake. And so they're building between homes, and the EPA shows up and says, no, that's wetland. Well, what about the house to the left and to the right? So they went to sue the EPA, and the EPA actually said, you can't sue us. We're the EPA. That went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and in a rare move, Andy, it was a 9-0 decision. That almost never happens, where the Supreme Court said, of course they can sue you just because you're the EPA. But they have this idea there that they can't be touched because they're the EPA. No one's allowed to fight them. Well, Andy, you fought, you've won, and it looks like this is another victory here. How did this executive order come to be? Who was poking the president to get this done?
I don't have all the details on that specifically. I was contacted about 24 hours before this signing.
Right.
And then it just happened. So I'm kind of learning as I go. But I think just cases like ours where there's just an abuse of power and people are fed up with it and they're standing up and not tolerating it. So I think it got brought to the president's attention and he decided to do something about it. And he's good. I mean, I really like what he had to say, and I think this will be a positive thing moving forward.
Well, let's hope that this executive order does the trick. If not, we're going to have to try something else. But, Andy, glad that you're out there in Washington, D.C., and you got a chance to speak just before. In fact, you're the first one he called up to speak before he signed the executive order, so it was good to see that. And you're a fighter, Andy. I've been telling you that all along. You fight, you win. I'm glad you're out there winning fights like this. So thanks for coming on this morning. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Glenn. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. He is in Fort Bridger, Wyoming, where Andy Johnson is, but he's in Washington, D.C. right now because that signing happened yesterday. You can find the whole story, including listen to what the president has to say and watch Andy speak and see that cute little kid of his on the Wake Up Wyoming website where we have the story posted. 8:18 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Winter driving conditions are being reported statewide. We have closures. Interstate 80 eastbound from Cheyenne is closed. Also, we have closures along US 14, US 16, and US 20 near Cody. Also, US 89 and 191 near Jackson has some